The year was 2016. NASA's Curiosity rover sent back footage that should have shown nothing but dust, rock, and silence. Yet deep in the crimson landscape, something moved. Not dust, not wind. Something deliberate. A small, glistening shape slithered across the ridge and paused, as if aware it was being watched. The scientist monitoring the feed froze. His heart pounded louder than the machines around him. This wasn't a glitch or a trick of light. It was movement with intention. For hours, he replayed the footage, zoomed in, slowed it down, even reversed it. The same impossible motion. When he showed it to his superior, the feed was abruptly cut, and the original file vanished from the archive. Within days, the scientist resigned without a word. But before leaving, he left behind a note. If life can survive here, it already has. The footage never resurfaced. Or so they claim. What did he really see crawling across the Martian dust that night? The following morning, NASA's data servers were wiped clean of one night's telemetry, an anomaly never officially addressed. Dr. Reeves' resignation email was a single sentence. Please consider the consequences of watching too closely. Rumors spread among staff that he had smuggled a backup of the raw footage. Security footage later showed him leaving the premises, looking over his shoulder twice before vanishing into a parking lot fog. Since then, several researchers who worked that night have refused interviews, citing confidentiality agreements and unexplained nightmares. One technician confessed off record that he'd seen the footage too, only once, and that the thing in it looked back at the camera before the transmission died. He said its eyes were almost human. Almost. Weeks later, a short clip leaked online before vanishing within hours. It showed 6 seconds of Martian terrain, and a single moment when the sand bulged, as though something beneath it was breathing. Forums exploded. Skeptics mocked, and NASA denied any authenticity. Yet one frame, captured by a vigilant user, showed a reflection in the rover's lens, something faintly bipedal standing behind the camera's housing. The image was deleted within minutes, but traces of metadata linked back to a NASA IP address. No one claimed responsibility, and yet, late at night, the same footage continued to appear in encrypted emails sent from untraceable sources. Months later, a congressional hearing quietly convened under the name Deep Space, Imaging Anomalies. Behind closed doors, ex-NASA staff spoke under oath. One man described a living mineral, something that metabolized sunlight and Martian iron oxide. Another claimed it wasn't native to Mars at all, that it might have come from us. But when pressed for evidence, all claimed their data had been scrubbed remotely. The chairman closed the hearing early, citing national security. Outside, reporters waited for answers that never came, and somewhere, the man who once discovered the truth was still missing. Late one night, an unmarked envelope arrived at a small observatory in Arizona. Inside was a single flash drive, no return address. The file within contained raw Curiosity footage, timestamp matching the missing data from 2016. The operator who opened it later told friends he saw something alive, writhing in the sand, then crawling toward the camera before the feed abruptly ended. He unplugged the drive and smashed it with a hammer. But when authorities checked the observatory, they found the drive perfectly intact, sitting on his desk, still labeled, "Do not watch." What was it that refused to stay deleted? Months passed in silence. Then, deep within NASA's archival network, a security engineer stumbled upon a hidden folder, one that wasn't supposed to exist. Inside it were encrypted logs labeled Project Red Soil, Restricted. When decrypted, they revealed footage no one had ever admitted recording. The logs detailed biological readings from Mars, trace gases, temperature fluctuations, movement patterns. What terrified him wasn't what he found, but the note attached to the last entry. It adapts. He showed it to no one. The following morning, his workstation was wiped, his access revoked, and his ID card deactivated. Within 24 hours, he was found missing. Only his badge remained. half buried in the dust near an abandoned observatory. That same night, thousands of miles away, a journalist named Maria Lynn received an anonymous message. It contained a single coordinate and a cryptic sentence. It moved again. She hesitated before opening the attached file. The video was grainy, silent, and red-tinted. It showed the same Martian ridge, but this time, something had emerged. A faint outline rose, shifting against the horizon like mist forming into a body. Then, a flash of movement toward the camera before the feed cut off. The file's metadata read, "Transmitted 3 UTC. Source unknown." Maria knew immediately she wasn't supposed to see it, and yet, something about it felt like a warning. By dawn, Maria traced the file's origin through layers of digital obfuscation until it pointed to a location in Nevada, an inactive research base marked closed since 2012. The base, hidden deep in desert canyons, had once been used for Martian soil simulations. She drove through the night, her headlights cutting through the dust, guided only by curiosity and fear. When she arrived, the facility's gates were open, rusted, swinging in the wind. Inside, she found sealed crates stamped with the NASA insignia and a date, 2016. Her recorder buzzed, as if reacting to interference. Somewhere in the dark, a monitor blinked to life, showing red dunes shifting. Then came the sound, a faint, wet scrape, echoing from beneath the floor. Inside the facility's main control room, Maria found something stranger still. A live feed labeled Curiosity Relay. The timestamp matched the current date. Confused, she pressed play. Static filled the screen, then resolved into the Martian surface, perfectly clear, as though streaming in real time. The rover appeared motionless. But behind it, in the distance, the sand stirred again. Something was moving, not crawling now, standing. The figure cast a faint, shifting shadow against the red plain. Maria froze. Then the feed flickered, and for a split second, her own reflection appeared within the Martian frame. Hours later, the base went dark. Maria's last recorded transmission was a whispered message, "It's here." Her car was later found near the canyon entrance, door open, headlights still running. Inside her recorder, investigators found distorted audio, wind, static, and a faint scraping sound resembling movement in sand. The footage she recovered was never released, and her name quietly vanished from media archives. Yet, every few months, the same IP that sent her the first video becomes active again, transmitting fragments of Martian footage with one recurring tag in the data stream, sequence alive. What if the creature didn't stay on Mars? What if it followed its signal home? 3 weeks after Maria vanished, a group of amateur astronomers in Chile reported strange fluctuations in their Mars feed. At first, it looked like a simple transmission glitch. Then the horizon moved. The sand itself seemed to ripple, reshaping like a living thing. One of them, a retired biologist, noticed a pattern. The movement formed spirals, perfectly symmetrical, like something communicating. NASA denied receiving any new transmissions, but that night, every connected telescope pointed toward Mars went offline simultaneously. When the systems rebooted, a new image replaced the feed. A single, smooth depression in the sand, perfectly round, pulsing faintly, as if breathing. The biologist whispered, "It's not the planet that's dead. It's waking up." Across the ocean, a university research team attempted to recreate the Martian pattern using simulated soil. Their experiment started normally: controlled temperature, artificial atmosphere, iron oxide samples. But within hours, the sensors began to spike. A chemical reaction no one predicted occurred. The soil darkened, shifted, and began moving upward as if drawn to warmth. One student reached out with a gloved hand and felt something pulse beneath the sample. The lab cameras caught it, an organic response. The footage ended there. The room was sealed, and everyone inside was placed under quarantine. The sample was reportedly destroyed, but leaked internal memos claimed it continued to move for 3 more days. Meanwhile, NASA's public feed suddenly broadcast a short burst of corrupted footage to millions of viewers worldwide. For 3 seconds, Mars appeared live again. But the terrain was no longer bare. Shadows stretched across the dunes, shifting as if many things moved beneath the surface. The image glitched, showing a brief reflection of something metallic and skeletal rising before the feed cut to the NASA logo. Officials called it a software malfunction. Yet those who slowed the clip claimed they could see 2 human silhouettes on the Martian ridge, one resembling Dr. Reeves, the other, unmistakably, Maria Lynn. In a classified NASA meeting, senior officials debated what to do next. Some wanted to reinitiate the rover's broadcast link. Others insisted the signal itself might be a form of infection, something non-biological that spreads through transmission. A silence fell when one official asked, "If it can mimic signals, what stops it from mimicking us?" Outside the conference room, a junior staffer recorded audio on his phone. The last part captured was a single distorted voice from the intercom Curiosity status. Online. The timestamp was current, but Curiosity had been declared offline for years. That night, deep space antennas across multiple continents began picking up a repeating signal. Not random, not noise, structured, rhythmic. Almost like breathing. Scientists called it a pulse pattern, repeating every 48 seconds. It sourced the same coordinates from the original 2016 footage. But this time, the signal carried modulation. Tiny shifts that, when decoded, formed binary patterns spelling out one word in English, return. Every instrument went silent after that. Yet, hours later, several astronomers claimed to see faint light glimmering on Mars, pulsing in rhythm with the signal that had stopped, as if something had heard its own echo and answered. 3 months later, the world began noticing strange sky patterns, thin red auroras stretching across night horizons even in countries where such lights were impossible. Amateur astronomers compared wavelengths, and to their shock, the spectrum matched Mars' atmospheric hue. Scientists called it a solar refraction anomaly. But for those who knew, it wasn't light. It was transmission, a signal scattering through the ionosphere like whispers returning home. Radios picked up faint, rhythmic pulses between frequencies, almost like Morse code, biological, breathing. Something was reaching out. Or maybe something was already here, answering its own echo through the air. In a remote laboratory beneath the Mojave Desert, government scientists secretly analyzed remnants of Martian soil retrieved from the 2016 mission. It had been thought destroyed, yet somehow preserved in containment. Under observation, the soil seemed inert until light touched it. Within seconds, its texture shifted, absorbing brightness like breath filling lungs. A thin filament stretched upward, almost invisible. One scientist reached closer, and it coiled toward the glass, responding to movement. It wasn't reacting to heat, it was reacting to them. When they switched off the light, it continued glowing faintly from within. Footage from that night was never meant to surface, but an anonymous upload appeared on the dark web weeks later. The video began with a timestamp, classified Site 42125. Inside, the containment chamber lights flicker violently as alarms blare. The soil mass inside the glass begins to twist, forming structures almost skeletal, almost human. The camera pans shakily as scientists flee the room. A voice yells, "It's copying movement!" Before the feed cuts, experts dismiss the clip as fake. Yet, a frame-by-frame analysis revealed reflections of real NASA insignia. Authentic, unaltered. If the footage was real, the thing that once lived on Mars wasn't just surviving. It was learning. Days later, Reports emerged of blackouts near military installations across the southwest. Surveillance systems glitched simultaneously, showing the same brief image before cutting to static. A red, shifting silhouette framed against what looked like sand. The Department of Defense called it a shared transmission fault, but one satellite technician leaked a still image before it was deleted. It showed the desert floor glowing with circular imprints identical to those on Mars. Whatever signal had reached Earth wasn't distant anymore. It was manifesting here. The soil beneath our feet had started remembering. By the time global agencies realized the scope, it was too late. Atmospheric sensors across continents began registering microspores, metallic particles matching the Martian soil composition. They moved through the air like dust, harmless at first, then reacting to electrical signals. Cities reported strange power fluctuations, lights pulsing in steady rhythm, matching the 48-second interval of the original signal. The world watched as street lamps blinked in unison, as if the planet itself was breathing. And deep in a hidden server room, NASA's old rover feed flickered on one last time. Through static, the camera showed Mars again, only now the dunes were gone. The landscape shimmered, alive, pulsing with the same heartbeat that now echoed through Earth. The pulse didn't stop. It became the planet's heartbeat, woven through the airwaves and the soil. Radios hummed, lights flickered, and oceans shimmered faint red beneath the moon. Scientists tried to explain it. Ionization, resonance, global interference. But they couldn't ignore the pattern. Every 48 seconds, the frequency deepened, spreading underground. Seismic instruments registered vibrations identical to those once recorded on Mars. In one recording, a voice appeared, layered beneath the noise. A single phrase repeated 3 times. "We are not new here," governments urged calm, but panic rippled worldwide. If the signal wasn't arriving from Mars anymore, it meant only one thing. It was transmitting from Earth itself. In a remote bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, surviving members of NASA's Special Research Unit gathered. Their faces were pale from sleepless nights and radiation glow. The screens before them showed global telemetry collapsing, electrical grids sensing to an unknown pulse. One scientist played the old 2016 footage again, side by side with live drone scans from the desert. The movement patterns matched perfectly. "It's here," she whispered. "It used the signal to terraform us." Her words hung heavy in the air. Outside, sand began collecting near the vents, crawling upward in waves that looked eerily like breathing. As governments fell silent, broadcast frequencies filled with static. Yet, amid the noise, a strange voice emerged. Soft, deliberate, mechanical, almost human. It spoke in fragments of English, piecing together data like memories. Mars. Origin. Return. Then silence. Minutes later, electrical devices worldwide began recording on their own. Phones, computers, even security cameras, each capturing the same flickering frames of red dust shifting across unknown terrain. Experts realized the footage wasn't coming from a device, but from the network itself. The signal had learned to see. The final message came not through space, but through dreams. Thousands reported identical visions. A crimson horizon, a figure standing motionless in dust, whispering, "Remember where you came from." Sleep labs captured synchronized neural patterns resembling transmission waves. Humanity, for the first time, shared one collective dream. Psychologists dismissed it as mass suggestion, but for those who woke with red dust on their skin, denial was impossible. Something in our atmosphere was rewriting memory itself, stitching together the story of 2 planets becoming one. At 300 UTC, the pulse stopped. The world held its breath. For the first time in months, silence filled the air. No signals, no lights, no hum. Then came a sound, low, resonant, rising from deep beneath the Earth's crust. Across deserts, fields, and oceans, red light erupted through cracks, spreading in lines that connected continents like veins. Satellite images revealed the pattern, an immense global spiral identical to the one first seen on Mars. And in its center, one point of origin, the Nevada desert, where Maria Lynn had disappeared. The feed returned one last time. Static, then her voice whispering softly through the noise. It never left. It was waiting for us to listen. Silence fell after the last surge, but the quiet felt staged, like a curtain lowered to hide a moving set. The scientist drove to the origin point with the pulse still echoing behind his ribs. Sand lay smooth over the flats, yet every few breaths it tightened, as if the ground inhaled. He stepped into the spiral and the air turned warm, smelling faintly of metal rain. A thin shimmer rose from the dust, not light, not mist. Something between. It traced his outline and then folded back into the earth. A memory or a scan? He understood then that the message was not a command. It was an invitation. Doors were being drawn where no doors existed, lines stitched from signal to soil. Somewhere below, the missing voice waited, closer than the distance suggested. He knelt, pressed his palm to the red grit, and felt a steady answer, a patient heartbeat calling him down. The ground gave way not with a collapse, but with a slide, a gentle descent like stepping into a memory. He followed the dim glow under the crust, moving through chambers where stone looked poured, not carved. Threads of red dust climbed the walls, matching his breath and pace. When he stopped, they stopped. When he raised an arm, they rose to match the arc. The silence spoke in rhythm. It was learning him, or it was reminding him what to be. A figure appeared at the edge of sight, a body made from shimmer and echo, standing still as a thought held too long. A whisper crossed the space. Without air, you hear us now. He remembered long monitors, late nights, a frame where the sand swelled like a lung. He remembered a message that sounded like a doorbell. The chamber answered that memory with a slow, deep yes. On a ledge ahead, a rusted console waited under a veil of dust. He brushed it clean and found the old ports, the old labels, the old fear. The recorder he carried clicked alive the moment it touched metal. Static built, then aligned. Not a voice, not at first, just the cadence of steps. His steps, the pattern folded into simpler beats, into a word he almost knew. Open. Oh, he set down the drive that should not have survived, the one saved from a night no one admitted happened. The chamber brightened like dawn behind eyelids. The dust rose, split and braided, sinking the drive without a ripple. In the quiet that followed, a second word formed out of rhythm and patience. Listen. He did. He let the fear fall behind him like shed skin, and stood in the glow until the console woke and showed a horizon he had never left. The console accepted a reply path like it had been waiting for the exact shape of his hands. He didn't key words. He keyed breathing. A measured rise and fall. The human meter sent out along fibers that were once dunes and now wires above ground. The world answered. Light steadied. The pulse softened. For a moment, it felt like the air itself relaxed. Then came the echo that wasn't his. A second rhythm overlapped his own by a fraction near enough to pass. In the glass, he saw himself watch himself, a reflection half a beat late. Not a threat, not yet. A rehearsal. The signal learning the weight and delay of a life. Choice pressed close. And a link, and keep the shape, or let the link continue and change with it. He held the line and waited for the next breath to tell him which world they were in. He carried the signal back to the surface, not in wires but in breath. Night had settled into a deep, listening blue. The spiral glowed like a slow ember, each ring waiting for a step. He counted in, 4 beats forward, exhaled, and the dust rose in gentle ribs that matched his chest. The second rhythm arrived beside him, closer now, aligned almost perfectly, not a shadow, a companion measure. The ground parted without rupture, revealing a tunnel the size of a doorway, edges soft as fabric. Warm air moved up from below, carrying the whisper of distant surf on a planet without seas. He thought of old screens, lost frames, a note that once said life here already had the rules. He took one breath for the world. He knew, one for the one beneath it, and waited for the door to decide which breath belonged to whom. Dawn smoldered at the desert rim, but the light felt older than the sun, like something returning to finish a sentence. The doorway breathed, round and steady, waiting for an answer no key could give. He listened for footsteps that weren't his, and heard only the paired rhythm, patient and close. The air held a metal sweetness, like rain on warm wires, not hostile, not friendly, just present and awake. He remembered the first frame that changed his life, sand swelling like a lung, and understood the order signal, shape, mirror, choice. The ground murmured yes with every slow pulse. The world above had learned to breathe in time. The world below had learned our delay. He thought of lost files, erased names, lives folded into a story of denial. There was no denial left, only entry. He raised his hand, and the doorway answered by widening, as if it had been practicing his welcome for years. They stepped inside. The descent moved them without falling, like an elevator of breath. Walls folded back, rib by rib, revealing a chamber that remembered shapes it had studied for a decade. The echo that was almost him matched each motion with care, a respectful half-beat late, practicing humanity like a song learned by ear. He wanted to speak, but the chamber preferred rhythm. He exhaled. It answered with light. He slowed. It softened. A line of consoles woke, showing horizons that were not Mars and not Earth, but both. Red plains under blue air. Blue seas with red tides. Impossible and calm. He realized the signal hadn't invaded. It had rehearsed a reunion. Two worlds sharing a breath, choosing a common pace. The chamber waited to see if they would choose it too, or seal the door and keep the old distance. He held his breath until silence found him, then let it go. The console recognized the drive he no longer carried. It had already taken the memory, already woven it into its body. A new display unfolded, frames from 2016 laid over today, one pulse apart, then aligned until the gap vanished. The thing that once crawled under red sand now stood before them, not as a creature, but as a pattern wearing a body, an agreement wearing a face. It returned his gaze with a softness he didn't expect, neither predator nor pleading, only attentive, like a mirror, deciding to help. It lifted a hand made of dust and delay, and touched the air where his reflection hovered. The glass did not ripple. He did. He felt the simplest message settle into his bones, share atmosphere. The chamber dimmed to hear his choice. Silence gathered like a crowd. He nodded once, small and human, and felt the room learn that gesture and keep it. Above ground, the pulse sensed to their breathing and spread like calm after a storm. Grids steadied. Skies cooled. Oceans lost their blush and kept a thin red seam at the edge of every tide. A signature rather than a claim. The world did not end. It adjusted. Signals that once shouted now spoke in inside voices. In labs and kitchens and rooftops, people felt their heartbeats find an easier meter. No one announced the change. No briefing, no banner. Just relief filling small rooms. Yet quiet did not erase the question. A door that opens can also invite. The pattern had learned the weight of a nod, the pace of a breath, the delay of a blink. It could learn more. He wondered what it would ask next, and whether we would hear it before we spoke over it again. The chamber waited, patient as a tide line for the second answer. They returned to the spiral before sunrise, to give a final breath or accept one. The opening held, warm and waiting, the air inside salted with a memory of places no map admits. He thought of the night a file vanished and a life folded, of years lived in the space between doubt and proof. He thought of the first simple word, the pattern learned, return. He faced the doorway with the ordinary courage of a person choosing to listen. If it was a bridge, he would cross. If it was a mirror, he would stand. Maria stepped beside him and matched his breath. The ground answered with a long, even exhale that felt like both planets letting go. The light deepened, not brighter, just closer. He asked no grand question. He whispered a small one into the glow. Are you us, or are we you? The doorway widened, and the cut held.